Well, hi there, kids. How are we this evening, or whatever time it is when you're watching this? As always, hello to everybody in the live chat. I will be with you shortly, but as is usually the case, I am going to be answering questions pre-submitted by my wonderful Patreon patrons to start with. So if you have a question for me in the live chat, or if you have a super chat you were planning to share or whatever, please, if possible, hold off on those until I get through the patron questions, and then I can pay full attention to the live chat. Otherwise, I'll probably miss whatever you have to say or whatever you want to show me. So let's go to the questions that have been pre-submitted by my Patreon patrons. And the first one of those comes from David Colby, who says, I've been rewatching Deep Space Nine. It's super good. The thing that surprised me on the rewatch is how much I really love Julian Bashir, who I think has become low-key my favorite Star Trek character. I think part of it is because he has a really great arc that works retroactively. If you take it as read that he was always genetically engineered, his early behavior makes a lot of sense. Play a bit of a buffoon to seem non-threatening, dial it back, but be sure to never stray too far from human norms. I also really love that this also makes the Our Man Bashir episode a subtle hint. See, when most people roleplay on the holodeck, they roleplay other people. Bashir plays himself, because in his James Bond fantasy, he can be as excellent as he is. Ah, such a great show. Boy, you aren't kidding. Yeah, I left out your question. Isn't that nice? I scrolled past your question. Oh, right, I have to ask a question. How do you like Picard, and why is Laris the best character? Okay, there. See, it's always nice to begin a live stream with a fuck up, because then once you get it out of the way, then the rest of the show will run smoothly. Yeah, well, I like Bashir's character on DS9 too. I think he gets some unjustified shit from fans sometimes. I mean, I don't think he's... because he does have a character arc. He does develop from kind of a twerp in the early seasons into a much more sort of well-rounded, defined, mature character, and he was on his way toward that even before they threw in the wrinkle about how he had been genetically engineered. So I agree with you about Bashir. I think he's a terrific character, and I really, really like Picard. A couple people in the live chat were asking about it before the show started, and since you brought it up in your question, I will just go ahead and say that I really, really like Picard so far, and we're only 3 episodes in out of 10, so it's a little hard to tell like how much I am going to like it or where it's going to go or whatever. But overall, so far, I really like it, and I have liked it so much from the beginning that if they had released it Netflix style and released all the episodes on one day, I would have binged it all the first day. I mean, it was that good, and I was that anxious to see it. So I am very, very pleased with how Picard is going so far. And why is Laris the best character? She is a really good character. I have liked all of the new characters so far, which is, I know that the show is taking a little bit of a chance in focusing so much on new characters when the selling point of the show is Patrick Stewart coming back as Picard, and through that sort of tickling the nostalgia bone for us TNG fans. But they have basically said, okay, there's Picard, and he's our anchor, and he's our callback to TNG, and then everything else around him is pretty much brand new so far. And that's a very, very gutsy way to play it, but also very bold and very exciting, and I'm glad that they've done it that way, and I'm glad that that little chance they're taking has paid off, and so far we've got a really interesting show. The pacing is maybe a little slow, but then again, they have 10 episodes to fill, and I would much rather have a slow-paced 10-episode series than an unevenly paced 13 or 15-episode series, which is often the case for Netflix shows or shows sort of done with a similar model like that, and was arguably the case for definitely the first season of Star Trek Discovery, and possibly for the second season as well. So, yeah, I really like Picard so far. I really like Picard a lot so far. Next question is from Norman Bookwald. Is it a Romulan plot? A ploy to start a war? It's always a game of chess with them, right? I don't know. It's pretty much anything the Romulans have ever done has been a plot or a ploy, right? So if you're saying, what are the Romulans up to? Is it some sort of a ploy to start a war? Yeah, probably. Because that's what it always is when Romulans are up to shit, right? Next question is from Rick Dance, who says, with all the focus on data lately, do you think data's never-ending goal to be more human is in and of itself innately human, i.e. enough self-awareness to seek to better oneself? Or is it more akin to my phone asking for a software update? Well, I guess that depends on where you come down on the philosophical question of, is data actually conscious and self-aware, or is he merely an extremely convincing simulation of that? If you believe that data is truly conscious and truly self-aware, then yes, it is. It is a very that's one of the most human conditions that you could ever experience. That desire to want to be better, to want to be more than what you are, you know. If he is not actually conscious, if he is not truly a self-aware being, but merely gives the incredibly convincing appearance of a self-aware being, then yeah, I guess it's the phone software update thing. But I feel like Star Trek itself really wants us to take the position that Data is truly a conscious person, and that Data is a real that he is a synthetic life form, and he truly has consciousness. I feel like there's been a lot of work done over the years to establish that Data is such a being, and that as such he deserves to be treated, and other artificial life forms such as him deserve to be treated with the same respect as biological life forms. I feel like with all of that heavy lifting that has been done over the years, that we're meant to believe that Data is truly a conscious person. And if that is the case, then yeah, it's a totally human characteristic. This one is from John Gingras. Hi, Steve. Do you really have a Bakelite phone in your home? Well, this is an easy one. Yes, I do. It's not vintage. It's newer. I mean, it's. I guess by now it's probably close to 20 years old. But yeah, I do, and it's technically not a landline. But we use it like a landline, and that is a real functioning phone. There is a phone number that you can call, and that phone will ring, and I will pick it up and say hello. Yeah, it's a real phone. I just like having a phone. You know what I mean? I like having a phone like the one that Sipowicz had on his desk in NYPD Blue. That's really my only criteria for why I chose that phone, is that I wanted that. As part of the, and actually the phone is ringing right now. Yeah, to speak of the devil. Next question is from John Burnsy, who says, "Hi, Steve. So, Mayor Pete, with your best op-ed voice, tell me about him in a way knowing that I'm not voting in the primaries or the U.S. election because I am Canadian and am neutral. Perhaps this won't need to be edited." No need to edit this one. This is a good. Okay. So here's the thing about Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete, and this I don't know about the op-ed voice thing. I don't know if I have that in me. But the thing about Mayor Pete, from my perspective, is Mayor Pete is fine. Mayor Pete is fine. His policies would be fine. He is certainly a vastly preferable alternative to Trump or really any Republican. But beyond that, I really don't have a whole lot to say about him. I mean, he's fine. I would rather nominate someone who is better than fine. I think we have a couple of candidates in the running at present who are far superior to fine. And to me, those two are Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And I would much rather see one of them get the nomination, and I am certainly going to vote for one of them, probably Warren at this point, but it could possibly still be Sanders. We'll see. But I'm not gonna vote for Mayor Pete in the primary, because it's, if he gets the nomination and it's down to him versus Trump, then absolutely I will run down to my polling place, and I will vote for Mayor Pete, and you just try and stop me from voting for him in November if he's the nominee. But is he the best person for the job of the available candidates? No. Is he the most exciting choice? No. Is he the most progressive choice? No, not at all. So I'm going to vote for somebody else in the primary, and I'm going to hope that somebody else gets the nomination in the primary. But if he's the nominee, I'm going to vote the hell for him. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. But yeah, he's fine. He's fine. I don't think he's awful, but I don't think he's great either. He's just kind of, okay, he's fine. Mayor Pete, sure, yeah. Not my op-ed voice. Carlisle the Cinephile. Hey, Steve, my biggest hobby in life is tabletop gaming. I am currently running 2 campaigns, a classic high fantasy Dungeons and Dragons campaign, as well as a Star Wars one. I'm also looking for new games and systems to use for one-shots or mini campaigns, and one that really attracted my eye was Call of Cthulhu. I like the idea of doing a horror-themed campaign, and the rules are different enough from D&D that it will be something fresh for my players, but I've hit a snag. You see, I have such a love-hate relationship with the work of H.P. Lovecraft. On the one hand, I love the themes of hopelessness and existential dread that he pioneered and the sandbox he provided other, oftentimes more talented horror storytellers. On the other hand, there's the undeniable fact that Lovecraft was super fucking racist, and those bigoted attitudes inform a lot of his writings. Do you have any suggestions for how I can tell a compelling story using the Cthulhu mythos while avoiding succumbing to its most problematic aspects? I've already slightly changed the name of one of the entities I want to incorporate because it sounds and is spelled in a way that is too similar to a certain racial slur. Do you have any other ideas? Well, not really, because I am not super familiar with the work of Lovecraft, so I can't give you any specific pointers as far as that. But it seems like you're on the right track as far as just change things that you need to change. If there are aspects of the mythology that that you don't like, that or that you find troubling or problematic, or you just don't want to have anything to do with, and you're already adapting it for some purpose, you're already adapting it for a game, then just go ahead and keep adapting it however you need to as you see fit. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. I can't give you any specific advice because, like I said, I'm not familiar all that much with the work of Lovecraft. So, but yeah, if you keep the parts of it that you like, that you find acceptable, and you jettison the rest of it. I don't see that there's anything wrong with that. That's the sort of thing that people do all the time when they adapt work from one medium to another. In this case, you're not adapting, say, a book into a film. You're adapting a book or a literary world into a game. But it's the same thing as if you were writing a TV series or a movie or whatever. You would keep the parts that you wanted to keep and wanted to use, and you would throw out the rest. That's how adaptation works, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just keep doing what you're doing as far as I can tell. Next is a question from Jan Beek, EU. Hey, Steve, as you might guess or know by now, I am from Germany. Our history and the recent events in the U.S. force me to become quite frightened with what's going on overseas. From things that are a problem since, well, ever, like systematically making it harder for, e.g., black people to vote, etc., until the recent impeachment. The latter seemed to me a good thing at first, so that people could see that the Democrats at least tried to do something, even if this outcome was quite certain. But now it seems to me that Trump used this process to become even more blunt at lying and making his followers even more radical ignorance to the truth. Both examples force me as a German to look in my history, where the Nazis took away the right to vote from the Jewish people in 1935, enabled the government to put laws in action, and so completely took away the power of the parliament to do anything against the fascists or even control the government. Later, all other parties were excluded and further banned from elections or even existence. I fear that Trump is on this way, and he is even using this impeachment to radicalize his base so that at some point in time there will be a real danger if someone other than Trump will be elected. So basically, my question here is, do you think that this election year might be the last really free and fair election the U.S. might ever have? I fear so. Sorry if I, as a non-U.S. resident, am seeing things a little too worried. Oh no, I don't think you're seeing things too worried at all. Unfortunately, I mean, it depends on the outcome of. It depends on two things. It depends on the outcome of the next election, and then if the outcome of that election is not in our favor, then it depends on how we respond to that. Those are the two big questions as I see it. So if a Democratic candidate wins the presidency, and also it would be nice if the Democrats held and maybe even enlarged their majority in the House of Representatives and won back a majority in the Senate. If those things happen, then I'm not going to say there's nothing to worry about, because there are still major problems to fix, and there are problems with the Democratic Party that need to be addressed. That aren't nearly as urgent as the ones with the Republican Party and with the Trump administration, but still we can't just forget that they're there. We can't just, if the Democrats win big in November, we can't afford to just say, oh, thank God, we can all go back to normal. Like we still need to keep pushing. But if the Democrats win in November, I think we can at least relax that much when it comes to the question of are we ever going to have another fair election again? Because I don't think the Democrats, I don't think we have to worry about the Democrats trying to steal elections or subvert democracy in the very, very direct way that the Republican Party has now shown a total willingness to do, and Trump has shown a total willingness to do. So, if the election goes a certain way, then I think the danger is significantly less. If Trump and the Republicans win again, then we have some problems, because 4 more years of a Republican administration, and in particular a Trump administration, I'm not going to go so far as to say that would be it, like that would be the end of American democracy, but it would not bode well. And look at how much Trump has done, and how openly he has done it in his first term, knowing that he was going to be seeking re-election. If he gets through re-election and survives and has nothing to stop him, think about what he'll do after that. That's kind of chilling to me. So a lot depends on what happens with the election. Is basically my answer. It could get to be as bad as you fear it would be, if the Republicans are handed another electoral victory, or if they manage to steal an electoral victory. It could possibly get that bad. So I don't think you are. There is potential for things to be as bad as you're saying they could get. So I don't think you're completely being unreasonable. Unfortunately, as much as I would like to be able to honestly say that, I really don't think you're being all that unreasonable. Next question is from Dr. Babylon. So we just had the Iowa caucus, and it looks like Bernie Sanders is off to a good start. Right now, according to 538, he's the one most likely to actually win the nomination. Recently, I've been doing phone calls for his campaign. I believe that if he wins the nomination, he will definitely defeat Donald Trump. In addition to supporting his policies, I've also got a pettier reason for wanting Sanders to win. I know that nothing would piss off Donald Trump's base more than if he lost to a Jewish socialist. You are speaking my language right there, my friend. I can relate to wanting to win, not just for policy reasons, but also for petty reasons. I can follow you on that. I have no objection to that, especially when we see how petty the opposition is, when you see how petty Trump is and how petty his supporters are and how flagrantly hypocritical they are. That doesn't bother me to say that, let's not only hope that Bernie wins because he would be the better president, but also because it would be the one that would piss off Trump the most. Like I think that would be great, personally. So yeah, I'm completely with you on that. Like I think that's a perfectly fine way to be. Next question is from Sean Hartley, who says, "Oh gosh, here it is. My first patron question. I'm even more excited than usual for your next Ask Away. Do you consider the Kelvin timeline to be a similar concept to the mirror universe, considering the mirror universe likely came about due to some choice or event that was in some way different to the prime universe? In the Kelvin case, it is the destruction of the USS Kelvin, so therefore could be called the Kelvin universe. And with that being the case, do you think that a character could travel to and from the prime universe to the Kelvin universe and vice versa in the same way prime mirror characters can cross over? Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for being a patron, and thank you for watching just in general. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I don't see any reason why. I mean, it's basically just sort of the privilege of our point of view as fans that makes the mirror universe seem extra special compared to other parallel universes, now that Star Trek has established that that's the way its world works. That there are many, many, many parallel universes that branch off according to choices that people make or to the outcome of events. And now that we know that that's the deal in the Star Trek universe, yeah, the Kelvin timeline doesn't seem all that special. It seems like just another of an infinite number of alternate universes, and the mirror universe is the same way, you know? So no, I don't see why there would be any reason in universe why characters from the prime timeline could not visit the Kelvin timeline or vice versa. There's no reason why that could. And you know, the other thing, a very important thing to keep in mind whenever we're talking about things like this, like, would it be possible for someone from the Kelvin universe to visit the prime universe? Of course it would be, because it's all made up. So even if they had said in the movie or one of the TV shows, even if they had said, because of this technobabble, there is no reason, there is no possible way that anyone or anything could ever cross from this universe into the Kelvin universe. Even if they had said that and said there's absolutely no way it could ever happen, guess what? It's all made up. And if someone came up with an idea and they said, hey, we're going to do a crossover between the prime timeline and the Kelvin timeline, there's absolutely nothing to stop them from doing it because it's all made up anyway. The reason that they can't do it is just as fictional as everything else. So you can just figure out a way around it. So no, there's no, and yeah, I mean, assuming they could get all the actors on board, I mean, I think that could potentially be a lot of fun. I don't expect it to ever happen. But yeah, it could be a lot. I think now that Viacom and CBS have re-merged, and Star Trek is once again under a single corporate umbrella, I really don't think you wouldn't even have to work out an arrangement, you know, because before it was Paramount controlled the movies and CBS Television controlled most of the rest of the franchise. And even though it was all Star Trek, if they had wanted to use Kelvin timeline stuff in a TV show, I think they would have had to work out an arrangement with Paramount in order to do that. But now I don't even think they'd have to do that. I think it's all under the same umbrella. So there's no, I don't think there's any corporate reason why they couldn't do it. And there's certainly no creative reason why they couldn't do it at all. Next question is from Danny K. Hi, Steve. Have you watched I Think You Should Leave on Netflix? It was created by a former SNL writer and seems to solve all the problems that cause SNL to suck. Yeah, I watched it. It's by Tim Robinson, who was a writer on SNL and appeared in a couple of sketches. I don't know if was he ever officially a cast member or was he just a writer who occasionally appeared on camera? I forget. But anyway, I actually didn't really care for I Think You Should Leave. I watched every episode of it, and there were a couple of sketches that I thought were really funny, and there were more sketches than that I thought had really, really funny ideas or really, really smart premises that could have gone somewhere. But I just didn't think most of it was very funny, and it's one of those shows that I find very overhyped. I know a lot of people really, really love that show, and I watched it and I just didn't get it. I thought my favorite sketch was the one where it was the guy and his wife are in a club and they go and they're watching a magician, and the magician calls the guy up on stage and they banter, and the magician kind of makes fun of him and plays some tricks on him and stuff and makes him look kind of foolish to get a laugh. And then later that night, his wife is being like super icy to him, like she's humiliated that he allowed himself to be made a fool of on stage. And there's a moment, and Cecily Strong plays the wife, and she has this amazing moment where, you know, she's completely silent and she's laying down in the bed on her side facing away from the husband, and the husband notices that she's being quiet and kind of asks her, you know, if she's okay or whatever. And there's this long, absolutely ice cold pause, and then she says, "Why the fuck didn't you stand up for yourself?" And it is so funny. Like her attitude, her anger, her bitterness, it all comes through, and it's perfectly timed, and the pause is perfect, and the delivery is perfect, and it's just fucking hilarious. And if the rest of the show had been able to regularly get back to that level of funny, I would have thought it was great, but I didn't think it did. I think a lot of those sketches overstay their welcome just as long as a lot of sketches on Saturday Night Live do. And while I recognize that it is a different style than SNL, and it solves a lot of the technical problems that I have with SNL simply by virtue of not being a live show performed on a soundstage with everybody looking at cue cards, in terms of the writing and the premises and the way it handles the humor, I find a lot of the same problems with it that I have with SNL. So I'm afraid I can't say that I enjoyed it all that much. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was like awful, but you know, I just thought it was okay. It didn't make me laugh all that much, to be frank. Next question is from General Contact Unit Problem Child, who says, 2 weeks ago I said it irritates me that Boris gets to negotiate the Brexit leaving deal when he's rich enough to protect himself from the consequences of a bad deal or no deal. Steve, how would you feel about making it the law that if you want to hold political office, you can't be privately rich? Like, suppose, for example, it was the law that if you want to run for office, you can't have more than $650,000 in assets. If that was the rule, politicians would have to consider how the choices they're making might affect their own personal economic situation in a similar way to how the rest of the population does. Do you think that would be a desirable situation? Maybe. I mean, I think the goal of having a broader diversity of economic backgrounds in Parliament or in Congress here in the United States or state legislatures is a good idea. I think there may be better ways of achieving that than just passing a law saying you can't be worth any more than this if you want to run for office. I mean, I suppose that could work too, but there may be other ways to incentivize people with lower incomes from entering public office, like public funding of elections, like leveling the playing field in terms of campaign contributions so that you don't need to be a millionaire or a billionaire or be backed by a millionaire or a billionaire in order to compete. But in general, I think the idea of let's try to create a legislature where it is not all rich people, where the economic status of the members is more reflective of the economic status of the country as a whole. I think that's a really good idea. As for how we would achieve that, I don't know. Maybe it would be as simple as just saying, you know, you can't be any richer than this to get in, or maybe there would be other ways to do it. But in general, I think it's a really great idea to have representatives making laws and running the government who are not all from an incredibly privileged, wealthy background. Next question is from Shad Sterling. In Picard, where is Lore? You know as much as I do. I don't believe he's even been mentioned. Last we saw of Lore was in part 2 of Descent at the beginning of TNG's 7th and final season. And as far as we know, what Data says at the end was true, and Lore was disassembled, and he's sitting in storage somewhere. As to what happened to him between then and where we are now in Picard, it has not been established. So I don't know. I would not, given all of the data-related stuff and all the android-related stuff that's happening in Picard, or that seems to be about to happen in Picard, I don't know if we should expect to see Lore. I feel like that might be a little too much. But then again, I mean, there was the little cameo by B4. So maybe we'll see Lore at some point too. I don't know, but yeah, as far as we know, the status of Lore is still what it was at the end of TNG, which is he was captured and disassembled somewhere after the events of Descent Part 2. Question from Joe McClory. What are your feelings on the Nation Popular Vote Interstate Compact? And there's a video that I didn't watch explaining what it is. Also, are there any tools used to keep the United States less democratic that you would keep if you could make them go away? The Electoral College, the Senate, gerrymandering, prisoner disenfranchisement, or any others you can think of. Well, I didn't watch that video, and I've never heard of the Nation Popular Vote Interstate Compact, so I'm not sure what to say about that. But as for what tools would I use would I keep that are maybe less democratic, of the ones that you list in the question, the only one that I would want to keep and leave relatively unchanged would be the Senate. I don't have a problem with the Senate. I don't have a problem with a bicameral legislature. Or the Senate as it is constituted on paper, or the Senate's role in our government. I don't have a big problem with that. I think if there are problems with the Senate, it's down to the people that we elect to it, not to the existence of it itself or the way it's laid out. But I would probably get rid of the Electoral College. Gerrymandering should be illegal and shouldn't happen anywhere. I would want to get rid of prisoner disenfranchisement. I think once you serve your time and you're released from prison, your right to vote should be automatically restored. So I would get rid of all of that. But the Senate, I don't really have a huge problem with the Senate as it currently exists. Next question is from Isaiah Taylor, who says, "Dear Steve, I need some advice. Remember my Voyager religion? I strongly believe in it as it helps me get through the day in hard times. I still think that Barry White helped me understand the universe. Carl Sagan's book Cosmos is kind of like my Bible, and the Voyager space probe is still the future emissary of the human race, regardless if it is found. Although I'm still gathering up the pieces on it, do you think I should share it with others? Will some think I'm crazy? As an atheist, do you think I'm crazy for having such a connection to an inanimate object? I do want to share this belief with others. Should I? What are your thoughts?" Will some people think that you're crazy? Yeah, of course. Yeah. But do I think you're being... No, I don't think you are. Actually, I think I just went out of sync, so I'll bear with me for a moment. I will be right back. I'm just going to go away and come back, and hopefully that will resync everything back up because I just had a little hiccup here. So I'll be right back. To something that people have made, I think Voyager is as good a choice as anything, to be honest. So no, I don't. I mean, but if you're worried about what people will think, if you're worried that people might look at you a little cockeyed because of it, I think that'll probably happen to some people. And I guess it's up to you as to whether or not you would let that stop you. Maybe a good way to go about it would be, instead of talking directly to people about it and risking someone looking at you like you have two heads, maybe it'll be better to write about it, to get your thoughts out, in a blog or, a Medium article or a Facebook post or something, just to get your thoughts out, in written form so that people can read them and decide for themselves and then go from there, instead of just dropping it on people and saying, hey, so I kind of created this religion and it's based on the Voyager probe. But the bottom line is, if you have come up with something that gives your life meaning, gives your life purpose, makes you feel better about yourself and the world around you, and doesn't hurt anybody, then go with it. Like that's what I would tell you. If it means something to you and it gives your life meaning and it improves your life and it doesn't hurt anyone else, then go for it. Next question is from Andrew C. Hawkins. So Rush Limbaugh has advanced lung cancer. Do you think we'll be rid of him soon, or will he wheeze along with one lung in a wheelchair for the next decade? I think we'll probably be rid of him soon. I mean, advanced lung cancer doesn't sound all that encouraging, does it? I mean, it's encouraging depending on what side you fall on as far as what you hope happens to Rush Limbaugh. But generally speaking, if you are a patient, let's say, and a doctor says you have advanced lung cancer, that's usually an indicator that you're not going to be around much longer. So I mean, could he stick around for a while? Could he, as you say, wheeze along with one lung for 10 more years? Yeah, possibly. I can't imagine that his health is all that great in general, knowing how he has, as far as I've ever been able to tell, he's never been particularly healthy. He's never taken care of himself. He's always sort of made it like a bizarre point of pride to not take very good care of himself. So I wouldn't expect him to be around too much longer. Next question is from Jin Hai. In the Kavanaugh hearings and the impeachment trial, the press focused on a few GOP senators who were wavering, and then we were gradually disappointed one by one as they admitted they would join the party line. Do you think the press is too forgiving by largely ignoring the 45 or so other senators who never even considered taking their lips off Trump's ass in the first place? Or is it good to put a spotlight on the moderate GOPs who are wavering and forget about the ones who are unlikely to change? Is it media focusing on drama or just common sense reporting? Or is my above narrative inaccurate? Frakes Shives 2024. Wow. I'll go with you as far as Frakes. I understand why the media focuses on the senators who may have been wavering but ultimately towed the party line. But I think in general, the way that mainstream news media in this country has covered the impeachment trial, and in particular, the way it has dealt with Trump and the Republicans, whether we're talking about the Republicans who were staunchly on his side from the beginning or the ones who thought maybe they might vote against him at some point, has been absolutely deplorable and shameful, and has certainly done no good for our country or our democratic system or anything that we might want to preserve and protect over the next couple years. After Trump was acquitted officially earlier this week, the narrative among almost every mainstream news media outlet that I follow was treating it like a victory for Trump. And I saw more than one commentator and news story frame it as, well, Trump really had a good week. Oh, what a great week for Trump. You know, Trump really had a good week. Things are really looking up for him. Things are really going good for him. He was allowed to skate on serious charges that he was obviously guilty of for no other reason than the people who controlled the apparatus by which he was judged were completely corrupt and on his side from the start. And that was framed as a victory for Trump, as though he had a good week. So instead of focusing on the corruption, instead of focusing on how fucked up it is, that a majority of United States senators were willing to overlook or deny or minimize the blatant, undeniable, serious crimes of the President of the United States and vote to keep him in office simply because he's their guy, he's on their team, or because they're too afraid of his rabid base, too chicken shit to vote against him in the worry that they won't win re-election the next time they're up to run for office, is the fact that the media did not focus on that part of it and focused instead on, oh, Trump won, a big victory for Trump, is fucking disgusting. And I think that bothers me a lot more than whether they paid more attention to the senators who may have voted against him or the senators who were completely on his side. I think the whole thing is fucked up. And I think the way the mainstream news media has covered the impeachment trial and has framed the acquittal of Trump on the impeachment charges and the aftermath of that as good news for Trump, instead of focusing on what a nightmare it is for our political process and for our country, and making that the number one story. And the number one story in the wake of the impeachment trial and the acquittal should be This is seriously fucked up. This is seriously broken. We now have a president who is clearly a criminal, who is clearly in violation of his oath of office, and is being allowed to remain in power solely because he has intimidated enough allies into siding with him in the United States Senate. So the coverage of the whole thing on the part of the media has been absolutely shameless and gutless and very, very destructive. Here's one from Matthew Zeidman. Hi, Steve. I know you've touched on this topic before and will again in next month's episode of Trek Actually, but do you think there is a larger sociological explanation for why right-wing Star Trek viewers feel comfortable counting themselves among the fandom? Because Star Trek is such a long-lived franchise that has built a huge mainstream following over the decades, does that sanitize Trek's reputation, though not its content, message, or intent, to the point where people whose worldview is antithetical to that of the franchise feel a sense of belonging? I'm not excusing individual ignorance or obliviousness, which obviously plays a huge role here. I just think it's an angle worth exploring. Well, yeah, I think you have a point there, and the fact that it is so long-lived means that Star Trek, in a sense, is an institution. And as such, it is subject to a lot of the problems that afflict any long-standing institution that has been around for multiple generations. There are people who identify with Star Trek based on when they first discovered it, usually when they were a young person. And they, in many cases, probably still look at it the same way they did when they were that age that they discovered it. So they may have had some conservative ideas or interpreted it in a way that made it compatible with a conservative ideology or a less progressive ideology, or they may have identified with aspects of it that were not obviously political. And that enabled them to become fans and to remain fans for a long time. As I've said before, like I'm not someone who says if you are a conservative, you can't be a Star Trek fan or you're not a real Star Trek fan. But I am someone who says that if you are a conservative and you think that Star Trek supports your point of view, then you have completely missed the point of Star Trek. Because it is avowedly and willfully progressive and certainly not conservative in many ways. There are still some ways that Star Trek is a lot more conservative than we might wish it to be, and I'll talk about those in that video next month. But generally speaking, the show is willfully, intentionally, purposefully progressive. And so if you think that it's conservative in that way, you've really missed the point of the show. But yeah, the fact that it's been around for so long, the fact that it is enjoyed by people from many different generations, and that there are so many handles to grab onto to become a fan of it. Yeah, that explains part of it, sure. And a lot of it is also what you say at the end about individual ignorance or obliviousness. I think obliviousness is a big one. I think in many cases, when a conservative, especially someone who is like really conservative, who like thinks of themselves as a conservative, loves Star Trek, I think a lot of that is due to just simple obliviousness. They just don't get it. Next question is from some random geek. Hello, Steve. It is the star of the Steve Shives live chat, some random geek. And I haven't checked the live chat for a few minutes, but I imagine he is practicing agitprop even as we speak. The one who is almost always performing agitprop in my attempts to radicalize the liberals in the live chats as much as possible. See, I told you. Even if people hate me for that, especially my copy and paste statements, that is okay. I get infuriated by liberals as well. And for more agitprop, my question for you, Steve, that you will read to your audience out loud. Patreon won't post my other request. I tried to post it 7 times this week, so let's go with a short question. I have no idea what that could be about. If many liberals agree that people and the environment should come before profits, why don't we just get rid of profits in general? Get rid of profits and corporations won't people or the environment below it. Turn all corporations into workers-owned and controlled co-ops too. YouTube as a co-op. Okay. I could be down for that. I could go for YouTube being a co-op. Get rid of profits? I don't know. I mean, look, as I've said this before, and I'm sure my people who are further to the left than me are tired of hearing me say it. There are ways to substantially improve things in the society that we have without going straight for the radical solution of let's just get rid of profits. And the main reason why I would not advocate for that directly is simply, as I've said before, I just feel like that's not realistic right now. If you want to set that as a long-term goal and say maybe eventually we can get to a place where profits just don't exist anymore, where we just don't have a profit-driven economy at all on any level, I'm fine with that. But I don't see how we get there from here in a short time. So I feel like it's much better for the immediate future to focus on ways that we can extract certain things out of the profit motive that shouldn't be profit driven in the first place, and accomplish some progress that way. Like, for instance, in healthcare reform, there's no human reason why healthcare should be a profit driven enterprise. There's no reason at all. Education. There's no reason why education should be a profit-driven enterprise. It should be considered a public good. It should be considered something that we fund, that we enable people to access, because it is better for everyone, because it helps us to build a better society, because it helps individuals improve themselves. Healthcare is the same thing. People should be allowed to access the healthcare that they need without having to pay for it, certainly without having to pay an arm and a leg and have to go into debt for it. Not because that's profitable in dollars and cents, but because it is the humane thing to do, because it's the just thing to do, because there is no moral reason to do anything else. So we can do that without saying, let's just get rid of profits altogether. And I think those are both attainable goals. But if we start with, let's just get rid of profits altogether, let's completely remake the economy from the ground up without, focusing on the smaller steps that we would need to do first, then I don't think we're really going to accomplish anything. So in terms of a long-term goal, if we want to have like the Star Trek, the Federation economy, where nobody has to pay for anything, where as Captain Picard says in Star Trek First Contact, the acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives, and we are given the opportunity to just live how we want to live, and we work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity instead of working to earn money in exchange for our labor so we can survive. Like, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. And if I could wave a magic wand and make it happen right now, I would. But it's not going to work that way. And I just, for me personally, I think it makes a lot more sense to focus on areas that we can improve instead of saying, let's just remake everything. Because I feel like that goal, while incredibly admirable and laudable, and something that we should be pushing toward in the long term, is just not something we're going to accomplish in the short term. So that was the last patron question that I had, and I am now going to turn to the live chat. So how are we all doing in the live chat? Let me see what we're doing here. People are dropping questions in all over the place. I'm going to scroll back up a little bit to see if there are any questions that I miss. Jamie says, can you tell me why you think that profits are good? Because the idea that someone should get money for other people's work and not their own is pretty bad. I don't necessarily think that profits are good. I think that the centering of every aspect of our lives on the profit motive is actually pretty bad. The idea that we have been taught, as long as I've been alive and for a long time before that, to see everything in terms of profit, I think is incredibly damaging. So I would not argue in favor of it that strenuously. I wouldn't necessarily say that all profits are automatically so bad that we should just get rid of them completely. Although, again, I'm completely in favor of that if we can figure out how to get there. But no, I think the idea, it's one of the most corrosive ideas in our society, that we have been conditioned to reduce everything to, will this make a profit, to is this economically viable in the sense that it will make money for someone. I think that's an incredibly toxic idea. It's been very destructive. Before I get to the rest of the chat, I notice a couple of people have dropped in super chats, and I want to acknowledge those. I got one from I got a couple here actually from Twilord. So thank you very much for your generosity there, Twilord. And then also there's one from a name in the Cyrillic alphabet that I have no idea how to pronounce, that says, "Hey, ever saw people who took Whirlpool seriously?" Yeah, there are some people who seem to take it seriously, and there are also a lot of people who say that they find it difficult to watch because they think it's too close to the real thing. Yeah, and I think I saw a comment from someone. I think on the most recent episode, the episode that went up today, where they were reacting to it as though it was real. So either they were playing along or they mistook it for a genuine, a genuine example of what it is satirizing. So yeah, that's happened. Matthew McEwen says, "Would you make the Ensign's log into comics?" I mean, I don't plan to do that. I think the Ensign's log is just fine as a podcast. But I mean, if the opportunity came, I mean, the thing about one of the things that makes the Ensign's log so much fun is that it is improvised. So a comic, you can't really improvise a comic. But I mean, if like someone from Star Trek, if someone from CBS or Viacom or whatever it's called now came to me and Jason and said, "Hey, we want to make an official comic out of this. Would you guys be interested in writing it or whatever?" I mean, I think we would both be okay with that. Sure. John Burns says, Star Trek under one umbrella. Recently, NBC tried to buy Star Trek so they could let Seth MacFarlane head up the Star Trek NBC division. Your thoughts about a possible Seth Trek? I mean, he's not the first person I would choose. I mean, he would not be top of my list. But, you know, the Orville has been fine. I've liked the Orville so far, so I don't think he would necessarily be the worst person for it either. But he would not be the first person I would pick to say, "Oh, give Star Trek to him." You know, first person I would pick would be me. Obviously, I think I would do a much better job with Star Trek than Seth would. But I think, you know, I don't think he would necessarily be terrible at it. Let me see some more questions in the live chat here. Susan says, "When is Maryland?" Hi, Susan, by the way. When is Maryland's primary? I think it's in May. Actually, let me look it up. It is April 28th. So I was close. End of April is when Maryland's primary is. Yeah. So there we go. The nominee may well be chosen by then. Here's one from Seal0626. "Reckon the whiny babies hating on the new Star Trek just don't like the socio-political commentary that has always been there being relevant to them because it's not safely in the past anymore." Boom. I think that is exactly it in many cases. And I think that's what's so great about what Picard has been doing so far, is that it has crafted a story that is referring to and commenting on our present moment. Not general social problems that have always existed, and not problems that other people are having over there in some other country, but problems in our our current society. And yeah, I think it probably does make people uncomfortable. Yeah, and good. It should. That's the whole point. Liam Foley says, do you think the public infighting amongst Democratic candidates and their supporters will hurt the election in the long run? No, probably not. I mean, it's fairly typical for a primary election, at least in recent election cycles. Hopefully, it won't do that much damage. I think most people will unify around the nominee, and there'll always be people like the Bernie or bust people who are just not going to vote for anybody but their guy. But hopefully, they will not be a large enough contingent that it will actually hurt the result. As long as things are all mostly on the same page by the actual general election, I don't have a problem with people scrapping a little bit in the primaries. I got another super chat here from John Burns, who says, when you describe a conservative mind explaining what a left-wing when you describe a conservative mind explaining what a left-wing conservative is, they do exist, right? Do they? I guess. I don't know if they do or not. Seal0626 says, will the ensigns go straight to TNG or follow TAS first? I think the plan right now is to go straight to TNG. Andrew Michael says, I hate how the world sees the U.S. now because of Trump. I've never met a Yank that I didn't love. I always thought you were mostly good people. So how could Trump get elected? Well, I mean, it depends on how you define good, I guess. I mean, I think most people are good in the sense that they're agreeable and nice and easy to get along with in person. But unfortunately, there is a lot of ignorance. There is a lot of racism and sexism and xenophobia. And that is what allowed Trump to get elected. It was those aspects that Trump appealed to. And there were enough of them to get him elected, unfortunately. 255 AD, do you think the primary season is too stressful? After Iowa, I was like, that was tense. When's the next one? Next fucking week? I think it's stretched out way too long. I think it should be much, much shorter than it is. There's no reason for it to be to take months and months and months. I would much rather see a primary that was over, in a couple of weeks at most, as opposed to one that goes on forever and ever. So I do think it takes way too long. Way too long. And I think the campaigning starts way too early. Comrade Ibot says, opinions on the state capitol letting armed militiamen into the building, going around metal detectors and brandish weapons in a terroristic fashion. You said it was Kansas. It was actually Kentucky. I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That was a Facepalm 5 story this week. It's ridiculous. L.S. Gregor says, will we ever get a Quantum Leap reboot that we all deserve? Well, no, that's impossible. No show could ever be as good as we would hope that a Quantum Leap reboot would be. Violent Smoker says, thoughts on Iowa? It's a bit of a clusterfuck, isn't it? I feel like I don't think people who are jumping straight to conspiracy theories and saying it's some kind of conspiracy to keep Sanders from winning or whatever, I don't put any stock in that. But I mean, should the Democratic Party have been able to run a caucus without those kind of troubles? Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's an embarrassment. Daryl Lett says, Steve, if you tell someone you're a vegetarian and they respond with the statement, plants are living things too, what is your usual response to that? Well, you got to eat something. Fuck. That's my literal, I got to eat something. Fuck. Another super chat from John Burns, who says, was Theodore Roosevelt a conservative or a conservationist? Could he have been both? I know he was better than Woodrow Wilson, right? I would say Roosevelt is an interesting case. I think by today's standards, he would be pretty conservative, but for the time, he was very progressive, at least in certain ways. He was very, very fond of business and of private enterprise, but at the same time, he was a supporter of regulation and of workers' rights to a point, because he viewed those as being ultimately good for business. So you could say maybe he was progressive, but for conservative reasons, if that makes sense. But yeah, Roosevelt is kind of tough to nail down. Some Geek said, have the Iowa results finally come in? Can we go back to ignoring Iowa completely? Objectively Subjective has said much the same thing. And they are from Iowa and said on Twitter, like, oh, please, Iowa does not deserve this much attention. So I thought that was as good of a response as possible. Yeah, I people talking about Seth MacFarlane being homophobic and transphobic. That's a good point. That's on me for forgetting about that. Yeah. So I mean, that's add that to the list of why I don't think he would be the best person to be in charge of Star Trek. And Susan says, a guy stood up before class, announced that he was an exotic dancer, then passed out his business card. How big are his balls? I mean, I certainly wouldn't do it. It's not. I wouldn't be comfortable doing it. So good for him for getting himself out there in more ways than one, apparently. Another super chat from John Burns. Thank you for your generosity. Bashir getting friended by O'Brien is what helped him. He needed a good Irish lad to help him get out of his shell, which I think helped. One of the best sci-fi friendships. I agree. One of my favorite relationships on all of Deep Space Nine. Certainly one of the most heart-wrenching goodbyes at the end of the last episode of DS9, just that simple little hug when O'Brien and Bashir are about to go their separate ways. They're right outside the airlock, and Bashir just kind of shakes his head and pulls him in for the hug. Oh, Jesus. Oh, because that's the thing. You genuinely believe that they're friends. That's one of the basic reasons why I will always say that Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek and is the best of all the Star Trek series, at least up to this point. Is the characters form such real friendships with each other. They really truly feel like they care about each other and they're friends. And the best example of that is O'Brien and Bashir for sure. 255 AD says, do you really think Hoshi would want to be a commander? I always thought she just joined Starfleet to study alien languages. Yeah, we could tweak it, I guess. We could tweak my proposal and maybe Hoshi could go take a job somewhere else. But the main point of that was that I wanted people to move up. I wanted people to be promoted, and I wanted their heroism as members of the Enterprise crew for the last 4 years and having saved Earth and saved the galaxy a couple times by that point, to be rewarded and to be recognized. I wanted to put them over at the end as these people are heroes and they deserve to be respected and rewarded for this. So that was what was behind all of the promotions and stuff. But yeah, maybe we could work it so Hoshi wouldn't actually become a first officer. She could be something else if we figured out that there was something more suitable to her character. Sean Hartley says, this may have been asked, and I may have missed it. On Picard, we get the F-bomb. Should Star Trek, a wholesome show, be a show with swear words? Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I have no problem at all with somebody saying fuck in a Star Trek show. It doesn't bother me at all. And I think a lot of the people who are getting upset about it are either they just don't like it because it's relatively new, or they're just personally kind of prudish and just don't, they're trying to, well, that's not Star Trek. Star Trek shouldn't do that. I mean, come on. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, Darren Hill, left-wing conservative. Keep your hands off my Medicare. That's a great. That's perfect. Seal0626 says, on Picard, synth, not android. Members of the Borg, not victims. Romulan lives, not lives. All distancing, dehuman, or depersoning word choices. Reckon that's deliberate, or am I reaching? No, I think that's very deliberate. I think that's part of what I believe will be one of the messages of this season, at least as far as it's shaping up. Hi, Leto. I'm way behind in the chat, but hello. Thanks for being here. And I'm great, Audie's great, and Ashley's great. So thanks for asking. A couple of super chats here. Here's one from Marty Abernathy. Hi, Marty. Congrats, Steve. Every time I hear someone quote scripture, I hear it in Michael Worley's voice. Well, thank you, and I'm very sorry. Here's one from John Burns. What about Enterprise? I thought there were some very good relationships. I know the ending sucked. Thank you, number one. But Trip and the captain discussing water polo matches. Yeah, the relationships on Enterprise were pretty good. I wouldn't say they're as good as the ones on DS9, but they're certainly better than most of the ones on Voyager, for sure. Another super chat from Twilord. Thank you again. Is it reductive to frame Cardassia solely as Nazis? Yes, I would say it's reductive if you say that seeing them as Nazis is the only possible way to interpret them. Yes, I think that is reductive, because there are other metaphors that work for the Cardassians. But Nazis is definitely one, and Nazis, from what the writers and producers of the show have said, Nazis is certainly one that they had in mind as they were writing those episodes. Is it the only one that works? No. No, it's not the only lens through which you can view the Cardassians and make sense of them or draw some meaning from them. So it is reductive to say that's all they are, but it's certainly a very big part of what they are. Andrew Hayes says, easy question. Favorite new character so far on Picard? Is that an easy question? Is it wrong if I say I kind of like the Admiral who read Picard the Riot Act? I kind of like her. Just because I think it's so... here's the thing. I love the way they are characterizing Picard so far, where he's still Picard, he's still an admirable person, he's still our hero, but there are people, not just people who are possibly corrupt or part of a conspiracy, but people just who are just, honest, ordinary people who really don't like him and really don't like what he did or the way he handled himself in the aftermath or leading up to the Romulan evacuation, whatever. I love that. I love that he is not being treated like a statue. And I generally think it's a very gutsy decision anytime a Star Trek character is allowed to show some disdain for Picard. So, I mean, even though I don't feel that way about him, and I still think he's a heroic character, and I would tend to side with him for the most part, I love that there are characters who are willing to say, fuck you, Jean-Luc, you are such an asshole, you self-righteous, blah, 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 blah. I think that's fantastic. So I really like that Admiral. And his Romulan roommates or his Romulan housekeepers or whatever they are, they're great. Of course, the dog, number one, is fantastic. I mean, it's hard to pick because I do like a lot of the new characters. Liam Foley, would you like to see Discovery progress into a retconned version of the original series with Kirk, Spock et al.? No, I prefer to see Discovery continue to move along and focus on its original characters. But, if somebody wanted to do a follow-up or a spin-off set aboard the version of the Enterprise that we saw in Season 2 of Discovery, I would watch the shit out of that because I think the actors playing Pike and Spock and number one are very well cast and did terrifically with those characters. And I fucking love that set. I love that Enterprise set. It's one of my favorite Star Trek sets ever. So I would watch anything with that. But do I think that's how Discovery itself should go? No. 255 AD says, the media called Bernie dishonest for claiming victory when he only won the popular vote, but Pete gets a pass for claiming victory before all the results are even in. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain people who would rather have Pete be the nominee than Sanders because he is probably a more acceptable moderate candidate and a more establishment candidate, so there's probably some of that going on. I don't think Sanders is as radical or as one of a kind as some of his more ardent supporters think he is, but he's certainly a less acceptable choice to mainstream Democrats and to the establishment than someone like Mayor Pete would be. Some random geek says, how many auto calls do you get from the landline? Not very many, actually. A few. I can't say I don't get any, but I get just as many on my cell phone, on my mobile, actually, as I get on the landline. Milkman Norm says, just got here, so this may have been covered, but if not, what did you think about the Cody lashing angle on AEW? I thought it was the best wrestling angles I'd seen in a long time. I'm glad you asked about that. I thought it was fantastic. I agree with you. I think it was one of the best wrestling angles I've seen in a long time, too. Actually, I think there have been a couple of angles or promos in AEW so far that I would rank among the best individual wrestling segments that I have seen in a very long time. One would be Cody's promo leading up to his match with Jericho in November. I thought Cody's promo was fucking amazing. It was one of the best promos I'd seen in years. And yeah, that lashing segment on Wednesday with MJF hitting him with the belt and the way they milked it for every ounce of emotion and drama. The psychology of MJF wanting to try and force Cody to quit so he wouldn't have to have the match with him. All of it. The people coming down to support Cody like in phases. Finally with his wife coming down to get him through the last one. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it was outstanding. And thank you for asking me about that and giving me a chance to gush about that because I thought it was really, really terrific. Michael Strathmore says, most pressing question of all, what happened to number 1? Mutt makes sure poor Picard is breathing each morning, but then is nowhere to be found during a home invasion? Damned pooch. He was probably taking a nap, you know. Some Random Geek says, shouldn't we encourage saying I love you to platonic friends, Bashir and O'Brien, Jake and Nog? Yeah, sure. I think that would be fine to encourage. Yeah, it shouldn't. Yeah, I agree. Showing emotion to platonic friends is something that is kind of stigmatized with certain people, and that's a shame. Yes, some random geek. I will promote social justice alchemy. Hey, everybody. Join Some Random Geek, John Brockman, Tom McDonald, Jamie J, Phoenix, and Leto Anor for Social Justice Alchemy at 7 p.m. UTC. That's 2 p.m. Eastern Time each Saturday. And the link to the channel is in the live chat right now. Scroll up a little bit and you'll see where Some Random Geek posted the link. Marty Abernathy, is Bernie a Cardassian? I don't think so. I wouldn't say Bernie's a Cardassian. Alam Drab says Bernie is a Tellarite. I don't know. Maybe. He does like to argue. Ryan Regal, or Ryan Regel, however you pronounce your last name, I apologize. Barkley meets Garrick. What do you think? I think Garrick would eat him alive. I don't think Barkley would do very well. Garrick is very intense and very intimidating. David Colby, are you looking forward to the 10,000 assholes regurgitating the last Jedi talking points at Picard for the next 3 years? Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Who could have foreseen that happening? Who would have thought that certain people in the Star Trek fan base wouldn't like the new show? That's never happened before. Matthew McEwen, do you think ranked choice primaries should be the norm to prevent a future Iowa fiasco next time? I think ranked choice should be the norm in all elections. I think ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting is just the way we should do it across the board. So yes, I think that would be great. Jamie J, is Bernie a Jedi? I don't know. He's kind of like a more irascible Obi-Wan, isn't he? Kinda, you know. Nihilus Kryik, any opinion on any Star Trek ephemera, books, comics, etc.? Well, I mean, I've recently gotten super into the 9-inch action figures because I've been buying them and making comics out of them. So there's that. I've liked quite a bit of Star Trek comics. I read some of the novels once upon a time, but I haven't read them for a while. Haven't kept up with them for a while, but I like the comics. I've read most of the IDW comics, not all of them, because there have been so many. They've really done a lot with the Star Trek license since they got it, but I've read a lot of it, and I've really liked that, and I've read a lot of Star Trek comics from the various companies that have held the license over the years, so I like a lot of the comics. Super chat from John Burns. Thank you very much for the generosity, my friend. And John says, in the TOS episode called The Doomsday Machine, Commodore Matt Decker, a man who is haunted by a decision to put his crew on a planet thinking it would be safer for them. Picard has a member of his crew named Raffi who seems similarly haunted. Yeah, there could be a connection there. I mean, Raffi seems haunted. The new Captain Rios, who is the captain who is flying the ship that they leave on at the end of the most recent episode, he seems to have a similar regret in his past, having lost his captain. So that could be something there as well. Here's another super chat from Andrew Michael. Thank you, Andrew. Your biggest fan, i.e. my daughter, loves Voyager. Would it be so hard to make a kudos Voyager Trek actually a big jerk? No swearing, though. Okay, thanks, bye. The 7 of 9 episode that I am working on now, that I am going to shoot either late tonight or tomorrow, is very positive toward Voyager. I don't think there's any swearing in it, but there is some slightly smutty double entendres and some jokes that could be a little dirty depending on how you interpret them. So there's that. But I don't think there's any swearing in it, at least not as scripted, not right now. So that might be something, you know. But yeah, I say nice things about Voyager in it. It's probably one of the most positive videos toward Voyager that I've done. So maybe she'll like that. 255 AD says, do you think the Cardassians could be read as British in India rather than the Nazis? Yeah, I think that's a possible reading you could take of them, sure. Some random geek says, is it worth doing to end capitalism in order to reverse climate change? Yeah, I mean, I think reversing or stopping climate change is worth it. Anyway, you can figure out that would work. You know, so if ending capitalism is what needs to happen in order to mitigate climate change, I mean, what's the point of having a capitalist economy and you know, people saying we need to be able to chase profit if there's no planet to live on? Like, what's the fucking point of that? Comrade Ibot says, have you seen the Star Trek Green Lantern crossover comic series? Yes, and I really enjoyed it, but I also loved the fact that, I think I've mentioned this on a live stream before, the DC Comics characters, the Green Lantern characters who cross over into the Star Trek universe, they wind up being the final survivors of their entire universe, and they're so chill about it. They're not like completely destroyed by grief and psychological damage. They're just like, oh, hey, we're the only people left from our entire universe. This is neat. What a fun new place. Like, they're so resilient. I thought Star Trek characters were resilient, but those Green Lanterns are like, damn. I mean, right? They're the only people left from the entire DC universe, and they're totally cool with it. Seal0626 says, do the people saying Irish accents on Romulans break the fantasy, think that American accents are the default, or do they think Gen Am doesn't count as an accent at all? It's a small thing, but it bugs me. Yeah, I think it's they think they don't realize that the American accent is an accent, and it's no better or worse or more or less valid than any other accent. Yeah. If you think about it, there's no reason why Romulans or any aliens should have any particular accent. It's kind of up in the air. It's wide open. Another super chat from John Burns. Thank you again. A Canadian who ended up winning the Victoria Cross while fighting in Italy during World War II was promoted from private to corporal 9 times. His name, Ernest Smokey Smith, played by Garrett Wong. I think that's perfect casting. Nathaniel Robinson says, considering Worley covered climate change, what do you make of American Catholics who disregard it, despite that the last 3 popes have said climate change is a major issue? Well, I think, you know, it just shows that Catholicism is, like, pretty much all Catholics are cafeteria Catholics, right? I mean, cafeteria Catholic is just another way of saying Catholic, because the Pope is supposedly the vicar of Christ on earth, and his word goes. So you would think, if the Pope says, hey, climate change is real and we need to start doing something about it, then as a practicing observant Catholic, you would have to say, oh, okay, well, the boss says that has to be a priority, so let's get on that. And the fact that there are so many Catholics who just completely shrug that off shows that what they're really no different than people who believe in any other religion. They take their own authority ahead of the supposed authority of God or the church. They only pretend to honor the authority of God or the church above all else when they need to do that in order to justify their own bigotry. Sean Hartley, do you think Picard will make reference to Spock disappearing into a black hole after the destruction of Romulus, as that did happen in the Prime timeline? I mean, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. Right now, maybe they haven't made reference to it because it just doesn't directly tie into the story they're telling. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And it would be a neat little reference to drop just to make sure that everybody gets that, this is tied into the same thing. Another super chat from John Burns. Last 3 popes, including the former Hitler Youth member? Yeah, I believe so. I think that's correct. 255 AD says, Renegade Cut suggested conservatives might like Trek because Starfleet is structured like a military. Thoughts on that? Yeah, that's definitely a potential reason why. Yeah, because when you look at it that way, Star Trek is very pro-military, even though it's often said, oh, no, Starfleet is not a military organization. I mean, it totally is. It is. Like, there's no other way around it. Yeah, because Starfleet is usually traditionally viewed as this perfect utopian heroic organization. Yeah, it could be very, very conservative. Like, people who identify strongly with the military and like to celebrate the military could identify with and like Star Trek for that reason. And that's also probably another reason why some of those people are not fans of Picard, because it seems like the imperfections of Starfleet, the shortcomings of Starfleet, are going to be a major plot point in Picard. Jordan Rosser. Hey, Steve, how did you feel about the interrogation of the Romulan soldier in episode 3 of Picard? It made me think back on Chain of Command. I found it odd Picard was complicit in it. Thank you. I thought of Chain of Command, too. I don't know how you could possibly not think of Chain of Command if you have seen that episode when you're watching that scene in Picard. I don't think... I mean, they tied the guy up, and Picard's Romulan housekeeper, I forget his name, looked like he was about to kill the guy at one point, which was a little like, whoa, shit, calm down, dude. But Picard himself didn't seem like he was being that rough on him. Yeah, I think at one point he even said, answer my questions and I'll let you go. So I feel like they were trying to kind of walk a tightrope in that scene, where they didn't want to have Picard come across as a hypocrite by engaging in torture with this prisoner, but at the same time they wanted to have, kind of an interrogation scene. So that was probably kind of a tricky scene to write. But yeah, I mean, I thought of it when I was watching it. And if Picard was complicit in something like that, despite his own experience, you could just chalk that up to simple human inconsistency and hypocrisy. Seal0626 says, no one asked why Jurati was there with the Zhat Vash goons. I hope they're letting her dig herself a hole, but do you think she's actually got Picard fooled? It would be a believable flaw for him. Yeah, I get the feeling there's maybe another shoe to drop as far as that goes, but we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that ends up, won't we? Dana says, Bernie... Hi, Dana, by the way. I just noticed you there. Bernie is way too outspoken and passionate to be a Jedi. He'd be a nice Sith. Ooh. From someone who I know is at least in the past, has been a very strong Bernie supporter. I've always had a feeling you had some Sithish tendencies, though. No offense. Susan Lee says, when will a comedy be made of the Trump White House? As soon as they're done, probably as soon as the real life tragedy is over. Yeah, the sirens. Yes, they're coming for me. Yes, they. Luckily, actually, that was probably Jack McPherson. I think Jack probably set another fire in Dargan. Luckily, he got away. Andrew Michael says, do you have any opinions on Space Above and Beyond? I remember very, very vaguely watching it when it was on. I watched maybe the first episode or 2 of it, and I didn't really get into it, and I remember almost nothing about it. Another super chat from John Burns. Thank you again. Remember Kirk convincing Mirror Spock of the illogic of the Mirror Federation continuing, like the end of all religions, except in China, of course. Yeah, and then as it turns out, things didn't work out too well in the Mirror Universe, according to Deep Space Nine. Andrew Hay says, chances of Hugh asking how Geordi is doing once he sees Picard later in the season. Will it give us the answer of what happened to Geordi in the comics? I really hope that there is at least a reference to Geordi from Hugh, because that would be nice. Yeah. I would like to see Kira, or I saw the super chat. Sorry, not Kira. I would like to see Hugh ask about Geordi. And now a super chat from Twilord. Kira feels like harsh truths on Irish for everyone. Yeah. Jamie, asks, how do you handle external distractions? I just ignore them. I keep talking until it's over. And I'm used to it. Jesus, I'm used to it. There's always ambulances and fire trucks running by here. And Matthew, I live very close to the fire station. I live about a 5-minute walk from the fire station. So yeah, it's like a block up and over from where I'm at. So it's pretty close. Hi, Phoenix. David says, you reminded me on the DS9 rewatch, I found that the DS9 Evil Universe episodes are so incredibly boring. I skip them constantly. Why do you think that is so? I don't know. When I rewatched it the last time, I kind of liked those episodes. So I don't know. But I remember when the show was originally on and I was watching it for the first time, they were not my favorite episodes either. So I don't know. I guess your mileage may vary. Sean Hartley says, how long will your Picard and Riker comics continue, and will we ever see them done in video format? No plans to do them in video format. I like them as comics, so I don't plan to make videos out of them, but they will be continuing for a while. I have been going through and writing ideas for them. So if I come up with an idea for one, I don't forget it. And I currently have ideas for 29, and I'm adding to it all the time. So I have finished. I've finished 9 of them, and I'm working on the 10th one now. So at least 20 more, and probably a good deal more than that. So I'll be doing it for a while, but I have no plans to make videos out of them. Yeah, Seal0626 says Jabon did confirm Geordi as Jabon is his name, the Romulan guy, Jabon and Laris, right? Yeah, confirmed Geordi as alive by asking why Picard didn't call him and Worf to go on the adventure. Yeah, that's true. Yes. Dear Alta Trekkie says, how are you today? I'm fine. I watched Picard today, and I still don't get why people say, me, that's just SJW. Because it has something political to say about our present world, not someone else's culture, and not the world like it was 30 years ago. It has political things to say that are actually challenging and critical of our world right now. And that is enough to get a lot of people to say, oh, this fucking political correctness. It's just SJW shit. That's why. Because it's relevant. Because it's attempting to say something politically relevant. And that pisses people off. Some random geek says, have you read Conquest of Bread? Nope. 255 AD. Remember Wesley got in trouble for covering up a flight accident. Did you know the real U.S. Air Force shows that episode to cadets to instill honor? I had no idea, but that's really cool. Seal0626 says, given that the first 2 episodes killed black men at their beginnings, possibly Geordi and Worf staying out of the way is simply sensible self-preservation. Eesh, maybe. Yeah. Liam Foley, what past Trek character would you love to see show up on Picard? Worf. Or Dr. Crusher. Here comes more sirens. Here they come. They can't see me. I'm just waving. It's performative. Hi. Anyway. So that's how you don't ignore them. Andrew Michael, how about The Witcher? I have not watched The Witcher. I am not remotely interested in The Witcher. Susan says, I've befriended the exotic dancer guy, and my current boyfriend has some jealous feels. Any ass vice? I mean, if there's nothing for him to be jealous of, I guess all you can do is reassure him that there's nothing for him to be jealous of. You know, if you don't feel like he has any reasonable objections, if it's just insecurity, then, I mean, all you can do is say, you know, you don't have anything to worry about, you know? Nathaniel Robinson, what do you think of the state of YouTube cultural criticism? I think it would be great if cultural criticism was a thing on YouTube. I don't know if it really is. Rob Janos, thank you. Another super chat. Thank you for your generosity, Rob. Hey, Steve, have you gotten the chance to watch Renegade Cut's video on Rick Berman's tenure in Star Trek? I'm surprised that the revelations haven't been made a bigger deal of in a post-Me Too world. No, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I've seen it recommended to me a few times, but I haven't had a chance to watch it, so I can't really comment. 255 AD says, do you think Bernie will win New Hampshire? I have no idea. Maybe, possibly. I mean, it's his neck of the woods, and he is very, you know, he's a very, I think he's probably a stronger candidate this time in terms of support than he was last time. So it wouldn't surprise me if he did. Sean Hartley, do you think the people hate the political side of new Star Trek, or they hate Alex Kurtzman as the frontman of Star Trek? I think with a lot of people, it's both. I think a lot of people just have a reflexive dislike of Kurtzman based on his other projects and just don't like it for that reason. And a lot of people hate the political side, you know, and maybe they go together, maybe they don't. Matthew McEwen says, does Discovery seem like it's getting very close to Andromeda territory? Lost ship from the past, restoring the old idealist order, also a Roddenberry concept. Does that seem strange? I guess when you put it that way, it might seem a little weird. I don't know if that was something that they were thinking about when they decided to go this direction with Discovery or not, but it's an interesting observation. Seal 0626, might Tasha Yar have named Sela after Dr. Solar because she didn't have many ways to tell the Romulans to go fuck themselves, but making sure a Romulan was named after a Vulcan was a subtle one? I'd like to think that is the truth. I don't know, but it's a nice thought, right? Serenum Geek says, read the Anarchist Program and Anarchy Erico Malatesta instead before you read the bread book. Will you read? Probably not. I'm just being honest. I probably won't read that. Super chat from Twilord. Bad joke among Irish Trekkies. Star Trek comments on Ireland issues. Britain. Nope. Star Trek creates Cardassia and Bajor. Britain. Haha. Damn Nazis. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Another super chat from NS Mike 87. Thank you very much. Hey Steve, I know a few of my Trek friends are rewatching old Data and Picard centric episodes. Have you done this? If so, which episodes have you watched and recommend? I have not done that recently. I have not been rewatching old stuff in preparation for Picard. But I mean, I guess obviously the most obvious one is Measure of a Man, because there are all kinds of touchstones to that. So that would be one. Obviously, The Offspring would be one. There are, I mean, I can't think of too many off the top of my head right now, but those are the two big ones because those seem to be the most obvious touchstones. Maybe Descent, because there's a lot of Data stuff in that. And there is some Picard Data stuff there. Yeah, I don't know. But no, I have not been rewatching myself personally. 255 AD says, I know you prefer Liz, but isn't Bernie the more pragmatic, strategic vote at this point? I'm wary of making those calculations in the primary. In the primary, I think you should vote for the person you honestly think should win, and do the calculating a little later. I mean, I feel like if progressives and Democrats were willing to unify around the nominee, whoever they were, it would not be as much of an issue. I think because the party and the progressive movement in general is so fractious and so difficult to get to support
a single candidate, even when the alternative is someone like Trump. I think if that were less of a problem, then we wouldn't have to worry about, vote for Bernie because it's more pragmatic than if Warren was the nominee. Liam Foley, do you think the country really is divided as much as the media and social media indicates? Yes and no. I think the Trump supporting portion is not as large as it sometimes seems. But I mean, I do think the divisions are real, and I do think the problems that are pointed at by those divisions are real for sure. All right, I'm going to wrap this up in a minute, but I'm going to scroll through and see if there are any questions that I missed. And by the way, as always, I know I've missed questions in the chat because it goes by fast, and I always end up way behind, and I'm scrolling through it looking for questions. So if I missed your question in the live chat, it was nothing personal, and I apologize to everybody who asked a question that I didn't see. Yeah, Matthew, the Jack does keep the local fire department very, very busy. Susan Lee, would Data punch Nazis? Yeah, I'd like to think that Data would choke Nazis. Yeah, he would lift them up off their feet like he does with Borg and like throw them into walls. I would like to think that. Yeah, and Best of Both Worlds, yeah, for Borg stuff, Best of Both Worlds is a good one to catch up on. And Descent also for Hugh stuff. I said for Picard Data stuff, Descent for Hugh would be a great one. And I Borg as well, to know who Hugh is and why he's important. Sean Hartley, if Data's entire self can be reconstituted from a single positronic neuron, why don't they take a neuron from B4 since they have him locked in a drawer? Why does it have to be from Asha? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the key is finding Maddox. I felt like the key was finding Maddox. I think Dr. Girardi said that Maddox had the theory that could be done, but no one else knew how to do it, if it was indeed even possible. So I think that's the deal. They can't just grab a neuron from B4 and, fractally clone a new Data. They need to know how to do it. Subvertive Geek, do you enjoy slash fiction of Data and Picard? I don't really read slash fiction as a rule, so I can't say I've ever read Data, Picard, slash fic, so I don't know if I would enjoy it or not. Seal0626 says the new Starfleet uniforms look like a manifestation of romanticizing the past, which often goes with insularity and stagnation, especially since they somehow just don't look good. Reckon I'm right? I actually kind of like the new uniforms, but yeah, I mean, I do think the evoking of past uniform designs is probably very intentional. Yeah, for sure. U55AD says, can you stop streaming now? I've asked everything I can think of and I'd like to leave. Yeah, I'm going to wrap things up now. Just one more quick. Here's a question. Let me see. Dana has a question. Do you think that a female presidential candidate would be viable for 2020? Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I'm hoping to vote for Elizabeth Warren. I think a woman would certainly be a viable candidate, and hopefully she will be. I would love to see Warren get the nomination, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to vote for her in my primary. So yeah, absolutely, a female candidate would be viable. A female candidate won the last election. Let's not forget. I mean, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. So that's one of these questions of like, gee, I don't know though. Could a woman win? Well, in terms of the popular vote, a woman did win last time. So yeah, I think it could be very, very, very viable. Absolutely. One more super chat from Twilor. Digimon for Smash Bros. Are V-Pets video games? I don't know what any of that means. V-Pets, like virtual pets, are they video games? Sure, why not? I don't give a shit. Yeah, I get if people want to say they're video games. Yes, sure, they are. Absolutely. Who am I to gatekeep what a video game is? Super chat from John Burns. Is Picard going to reveal a Frankenstein-type story about Maddox creating something he can't control who kills him? And Picard sees a flash that tips him off, like with Data in the first episode? Sure, why not? Yeah, sure. All right. Before I go, I'm going to take the video chat, the live chat off of the screen there. Thank you all so much for the questions. I'm going to start wrapping this up now. Finally, please be aware of the charity links in the description below this video. If you are watching this and you have a few bucks to spare, and you can support some of our friends who are linked down below, who are in need of some support, please do so. And if you can't afford to give any money right now, then at least consider sharing the links on your social media and spreading the word, because I know they would really appreciate it, and so would I. Susan, no, my washing machine did not walk to get in that corner. That baby was carried there, and it has not moved. Actually, it's moved a little bit. I had to replace the motor a little while ago, and I had to replace some of the belts a couple years ago, so it moved a little bit. But it didn't. No, it stays. And that's actually the dryer. The washing machine is over here. God, super chat from Twilord. Thank you very much. How much would it cost to get you to watch shows? I'm not gonna accept payment to watch certain shows. I'll watch what I want to watch. I'm not gonna let people pay me to watch shows. So anyway, charity links down below. Check those out. In addition to the YouTube stuff that I do, also check out my podcasts that I co-host with the hilarious and wonderful and brilliant and much better than I am in all ways, Jason Harding. They're the Let Me Listen podcast. I co-host the Late Seating podcast, which is a movie review podcast, and also the Ensign's Log, which is a Star Trek themed comedy podcast. You can listen to both of those and all the other Let Me Listen podcasts at letmelistenpodcast.com, and also the links are in the description for those. You can listen via RSS or listen on SoundCloud or whatever you want to do. Patreon.com/Steve Shives is how you support this channel and support me in my work. And if you are a patron at any level, you get the chance to submit questions ahead of time that I answer in the first segment of Ask Away live streams. So there you go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the support. Thank you for watching. And that's it. We'll see you in about a week and a half for a new Facepalm 5, and then 2 weeks for another one of these. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you next time.